the center of our love I stand, and from that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and throughout the world. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group and
Good morning, everyone. This is Michael, and I'm substituting for Tuya this week. She's away, but tuning in with us, and we will go through our usual process. Next week, we do have the evening schedule, and just a little reminder for you. On Wednesdays, that is the day that we do all things related to triangles. So in the morning there will be, the more academic science of triangles, and then in the evening there will be the practical triangles meditation. Now, last night I had to do the Soul of the Nations on the night schedule, because the morning was not possible. So I hope you didn't get, caught in that. I tried to have that announced to as many people as possible. Well, just a few things, readings from and thoughts from Master D.K. He begs us to shoulder our responsibility to distribute the invocation, noting how very powerful it is. Now, it's maybe our best means of preparing men's minds and hearts for the reappearance of the Christ. And he wants people to focus on the problems of humanity. He's written a book to that effect, and that has been modernized a little bit in the London headquarters some time ago, and now we have especially the global warming problem, which was not discussed at the time that he was writing the whole environmental problem. He says, really, it's a major difficulty, this financial problem. Maybe it's the crux of the whole work. And at times, he says, it may be considered almost an insuperable problem, because it involves the problem of true financial trusteeship, and the deflection of adequate sums of money into channels which will definitely aid the work of preparation for the return of the Christ. And it's closely tied up with the problem of right human relations. Well, obviously, people like ourselves who are studying the Tibetan teacher in a fairly intensive way are really working for the externalization of the hierarchy of light and love, and for the climaxing reappearance of the Christ, the head of the hierarchy, who will direct in many ways the process of human elevation during the Aquarian age. So if many use this meditation simultaneously, it may shatter the impasse which at present prevents adequate sums pouring into the work which hierarchy seeks to accomplish every Sunday morning. Well, here it is a nice early Sunday morning here in Finland, but it's not possible everywhere, and some of you are meditating at night and some later in the day. But the important thing is that a few of us do this together and lend our spiritual weight to the process. We take what we have saved the previous week and we dedicate it to the work. And we present it in meditation to the Christ and his hierarchy. And I always like this sentence: whether the sum is large or small, it can become an attractive and magnetic unit in the Master's plans. Now I'd like to maybe read just a little here from some things concerning the financial situation. Just get my papers in order. Okay. So this is taken from the externalization of the hierarchy. And he is talking about the courage of the Christ and how this should be a great example to us. I have naught to add, he says, in the way of an appeal for funds, courage, or understanding. If the courage of the Christ, as he faces return to this physical outer world, if the need of humanity for right human relations and the sacrificing work of the disciples of the Christ, and by that I think, he really is meaning the masters here, the sacrificing work of the disciples of the Christ are not enough to fire you and to energize you and those whom you can reach. There is nothing that I can say which will be of any use. So this is quite an exhortation, quite a charge. It's so very important that we sustain this type of fledgling work in the world amidst all the other competing demands for attention and for resources. Most of it, basically going to supply the personality with what it wants and not really in the spiritual stream. Here's some more. When the three major ashrams have done their work, and this work, in spite of the difference of ray, is largely educational, then the other ashrams will slowly send in their representatives to cooperate and to continue with the task. The idea is to make haste slowly and with a degree of certainty so errors can be avoided. Now here's an interesting point. The first ray to do so will be the third ray. By the time disciples appear from that ashram, the world will be ready for an all-over financial adjustment. The principle of sharing, that's one of the big requirements, that this principle be established before the Christ can reappear to the many. The principle of sharing will be a recognized, motivating concept of the new civilization. This will not involve beautiful, sweet, and humanitarian attitudes. The world will still be full of selfish and self-seeking people, but public opinion will be such that certain fundamental ideas will motivate business, being forced upon business by public opinion. We can almost see that happening right now. This whole idea of responsible investing, and not just choosing what will give the biggest yield, but what will be good for the environment and for the human condition in general. See, these things were written 70 years ago, and there has been some progress. The fact that the new general ideas will in many cases be governed by the expediency of interplay will not basically matter, because, of course, business under the third ray is given to expediency. It is the sharing that is important. When the, quote, adjuster of finances, close quote, as an advanced disciple from this ashram is called in the hierarchy, appears. So when the adjuster of finances appears, he will find conditions greatly changed from those now prevalent, and this to the following extent. The principle of barter and of exchange to the benefit of all concerned will control. Number two, owing to the development of atomic energy on behalf of human welfare, national currencies will have been largely superseded. Now, we see at the moment a retrogression occurring, an incipient arms race being rekindled. We see the fear of humanity as it stands before the threshold, and we see the retraction into the personality. We see these things, but they must be overcome. So national currencies will have been largely superseded, not only by a system of barter, but by a universal monetary exchange, representative of the bartered goods when they are relatively small and unimportant, and by a planned scale of relative values. We have some amazing thoughts here, really, about the future of the financial condition. These thoughts, of course, would horrify many people who are holding the resources of the world, a very few holding the great majority of financial power. And this would be the very kind of thing they would seek to avoid, because it brings power and the fulfillment of need to so many. National material assets and the needed commodities will be provided for under an entirely new system. Private enterprise will still exist, but will be regulated. Well, you know, they call this socialism, and the devotees of capitalism certainly are against it. The great public utilities, the major material resources, and the sources of planetary wealth, iron, steel, oil, and wheat, for instance, will be owned in the first place by a governing, controlling international group. They will, however, be prepared for international consumption by national groups chosen by the people and under international direction. Sounds almost utopian, doesn't it? But this is what the Tibetan foresees. So upon this subject, he says, I have no time to give, and besides this, anything I could say, he's right here, isn't he, would be regarded as visionary and impractical in a world which has not yet been subjected to the educational processes of the disciples and initiates on the first, second, and fifth rays. You know, political, educational, particularly, and scientific rays. Or to the fundamental changes which the new generation of young people, now growing up, will shortly inaugurate. I think that some of us, you know, and now that we're older people, a new group of young people has to be still more radical in its vision and yet practical. Upon this threefold condition of the basic control of the products of the planet, these third-rate disciples, working under the senior initiates above mentioned, will build the new structure of material relationships. And you know, the seventh ray people will be very much involved in this as well and hold much of the trusteeship of the financial resources, he says in another place. Anyway, it's a most difficult task, he says, owing to the evil, quote, pull of the substantial assets and the continued control, even though greatly lessened, of human selfishness. This pull is regarded esoterically as evil because it embodies the principle of imprisonment and has, for untold eons, engrossed the attention of the human being to the exclusion of the true values. Well, there are some very important thoughts which should give us good cheer. How long will it take for this to be fulfilled? It's difficult to say. You know, we have a new teaching coming out. It will probably take a century to be absorbed, and even then, not fully. And the Aquarian age begins in the year 2117, quite free, almost entirely free from the Piscean and sixth ray influence. So forward we work, and in our coming incarnation and incarnations, we continue to work for the expression of the divine plan, received in the higher levels of hierarchy and emanating in a way from Shambhala with the even more important, divine purpose. Okay, well, that's enough reading for the morning. So let's get on with our meditative work. So we realize the occult law that to those who give shall be given so that they can give again. We ponder on that and its relationship to our life. It's an important, very important foundational principle, and the corollary there, extending the idea to those who give all is given. So we achieve a positive and intended personality quietness, and we formulate clearly to ourselves and in our own words the answers to the following questions. So, first question. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? Next question. What is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? Question 3. What is my personal responsibility in regard to money, which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? So these kinds of questions, they have to be answered interiorly as honestly as possible, with as much vision of our incarnated life as possible. And we will certainly, by this kind of attention, we will improve in our response. The story of Hercules applies because one of the physical heads of the Hydra is associated with money, and maybe at first its wrong use for strictly material purposes, you know. So DK says it's a huge glamour. It largely comes because the third ray is not yet functioning in a position of subordination to the second ray. So many people are trapped in this great glamour regarding the wrong use, the non-spiritual use of money. So let us study ourselves honestly and see clearly, does this Hydra head, as it were, does it have any power over us? And what kind of weaknesses would we have if it had power over us? You know, it's interesting, there are many deep-seated fears around money and not having it, and the source of these ancient fears is actually the sacral center, the very center in its third ray nature, which is directly related to the concretized energy we call money. Both those fears and attention to money are focused in the sacral center. Now, how can we overcome? Can we make a plan? Can we set an intention to overcome our weaknesses with respect to the understanding and use of money, of financial resources? It's one of the first really great tests of the disciple because it has to do with the disciple's sense of values. Now we ponder on the redemption of humanity, its upliftment in every way through the right use of money. Just imagine if money were spent for the good the good. But as it is, we visualize money in the world today as concretized energy. That's the Tibetan's term for it, concretized energy, at present largely used for purely material purposes and for the satisfaction, where the individual is concerned, of purely personal desires. There are instinctual desires, a whole host of individual desires, so many of them, for so many people, relate strictly to the personality and not to the welfare of the group or of humanity as a whole, and that's where, until it is broken, until the pattern is broken, that's where so much of the spending occurs. So then, in distinction to that normal way, we visualize money as a great stream of flowing golden substance, passing out of the control of the forces of materialism and into the control of the forces of light. Then we apply the following invocative prayer with focused mental concentration and from a heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demands. And I think we're, in a way, addressing the planetary logos here. O Thou in whom we live and move and have our being. The power that can make all things new. Turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. Then we visualize the work to be done by those groups which claim our present allegiance. Any group we know of that is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. And then, through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, we see untold and unlimited sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And then say aloud and with conviction and emphasis this mantra: He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. Remembering at the same time that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. All this new condition is waiting to precipitate, and the great stream of flowing golden substance will reinforce the good which the plan represents, and the planet itself will be elevated, humanity along with it. Now, we specifically ask, and we name the groups for which we ask, and then there follows a demand. And we say and we think, I ask for the needed money for, and we fill in those groups and projects for which we ask. I ask for the needed money for. I ask for the needed money for. And can demand it because from the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. So, as the Christ is shown in the desert in auroric painting with Master M rather, he says, by human hands and human feet. This is how the New Age is built, and how there is created those methods, those facilities, those organizations which will really redeem humanity. So now, in your creative imagination, prepare to give your offering to the Christ and to his hierarchy. We say, as if in the presence of the Christ, we have gathered in your name. Lord Maitreya, be with us. And we then, in our creative imagination, offer to him and to his hierarchy the money we have set aside or saved or designated during the previous week. And we close with a careful consideration of our own responsibility to the plan, and we plan our weekly financial cooperation with the hierarchy. And this, of course, is also the time we give to hierarchy. There's an equivalency here about time and money that we are familiar with. So the Tibetan tells us, be practical and realistic, and know that if you do not give, you may not ask, for you have no right to evoke that which you do not share. And those are strong words. Attempt to feel true love sweeping through you, and have the fixed intention to express that love to all you contact. It is the great, attractive, and selfless agent in world affairs. We need our own methods of bookkeeping so that we can keep a record of our intentions and really follow through. And then rhythmically give to any chosen group or organization who works for the Christ and for the manifestation of the divine plan. We sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love into the worlds of the threefold personality. somehow on our little planet the second and third aspects have to be blended and fused. We have a second-ray soul here and a third-ray personality on this planet. Love and creative resources. The flowing golden substance which should be directed towards right creativity under the impulse of love and finally under the will which animates the divine plan. So let's do our best to support this growing work which is calling forth the presence of the spiritual hierarchy of our planet and will lead to the initiation of humanity, to the redemption of humanity, to the elevation of a new civilization. Thank you very much for participating. We'll have a little closing with music, and we'll resume on the evening schedule on Wednesday. But in the morning there will be the science of triangles. You know, the esoteric approach to triangles. So let us keep our point of tension and always try to elevate it so we can perceive more and do more on behalf of the divine plan.